Miguel was standing at his front door when he heard voices coming from the living room. Isabella and his mother, Esperanza, were talking, but there was something different about their tone. He opened the door slowly, and what he saw left him completely frozen. His wife was holding his mother's hands, both of them crying, and his mother was saying words he never imagined he would hear. But what happened next made Miguel question everything he thought he knew about his own family. Imagine coming home, wanting to surprise someone you love, and suddenly discovering something that completely changes your view of the most important people in your life. Let me know in the comments what city you're watching our story from, and leave a like to support our work. I'm about to tell you what really happened that afternoon in Quito, and what you're about to find out will completely surprise you. The morning had started like any other at the Santander home, located on the quiet Garcia Moreno Street in the La Floresta neighborhood. Miguel woke up at 6 in the morning as usual, made his black coffee, and reviewed his work emails before Isabella even stirred. That was how he operated, always anticipating problems, always trying to keep everything under control. Isabella came downstairs at 7:30, still in her pajamas, with that shy smile that had won Miguel's heart 7 years ago when they met at an art exhibit at the Museo de la Ciudad. She poured her chamomile tea and grabbed the whole wheat bread she always bought at Mr. Rodrigo's bakery on the corner. "Honey, I'm leaving the office early today," Miguel said, kissing his wife's forehead. "I thought we could have dinner at La Purissima, that restaurant you've always wanted to try." Isabella smiled, but Miguel noticed a hesitation in her eyes. "That's great, mi amor. It'll be lovely." There was something in the way she spoke, a melancholy that Miguel knew well. It was the same tone she used whenever the topic of family came up between them, especially when it involved Esperanza, his mother-in-law. The relationship between Isabella and Esperanza had always been complicated. From their first meeting 5 years ago, when Miguel introduced his girlfriend to the family, his mother made it clear that no woman would be good enough for her only son. Esperanza Santander was a strong woman who had raised Miguel alone after her husband died in a car accident when the boy was just 12. "This girl is too fragile for you, mijo," she used to say. "You need a woman who will give you healthy grandchildren and take care of the family the right way." The relationship deteriorated even further after the miscarriage Isabella suffered 2 years ago. Esperanza never said it directly, but her hints were cruel. Maybe if she ate better. Women these days don't know how to take care of their own bodies. In my day, women were stronger. Miguel tried to defend his wife, but Esperanza had a gift for planting seeds of doubt that germinated in silence. Was Isabella really doing everything right? Were the doctors right when they said she could get pregnant again? These questions tormented him, especially in the early morning hours when he saw Isabella wake with a start, her hand on her empty belly. At work, at the Corporación Nacional de Telecomunicaciones, Miguel tried to focus on the projects to expand the fiber optic network to the rural communities near Quito. But his mind was split between the cost spreadsheets and the constant worry about the tense atmosphere at home. At 2 in the afternoon, he decided it was time to do something special for Isabella. She had been quieter than usual, more distant. Maybe a romantic dinner could reignite that spark that sometimes seemed to flicker out amidst the family pressures. Miguel put his documents away, shut down his computer, and said goodbye to his colleagues. The traffic was typical for Quito, chaotic but predictable. He drove down Avenida Amazonas, thinking about how he would surprise Isabella, maybe with flowers from the shop on Avenida República, or perhaps by stopping at the jewelry store to buy those earrings she had seen last month. What he didn't imagine was that upon arriving home that Thursday afternoon, his life would change completely, and that the surprise wouldn't be for Isabella. It would be for him. Miguel parked the car in the garage and noticed another vehicle was there. His mother's old blue Chevrolet. Esperanza was at the house. This wasn't unusual, as she had a spare key and often showed up unannounced. Something that always bothered Isabella, but that Miguel never had the courage to confront. He walked up the 3 steps to the main entrance and stopped before the dark wooden door. Female voices were coming from the living room. Esperanza and Isabella were talking, but there was something different in their tone. It wasn't their usual arguments, full of tension and sharp words. It was something more intimate. Miguel inserted the key into the lock carefully, trying not to make a sound. He wanted to surprise Isabella, but now he was also curious about what his mother and wife were discussing in his absence. Usually, when he wasn't around, they barely spoke to each other. The door opened silently. Miguel stepped into the entryway and could hear the voices more clearly now. His mother was speaking, and there was something in her voice he had never heard before. Vulnerability. "I know I've been hard on you, mija," Esperanza was saying. "But you need to understand that I was scared." Miguel frowned. Scared. His mother, who had faced widowhood at 35, who had worked as a seamstress to support their home, who never showed weakness in the face of anything, was talking about fear? "I understand, Esperanza," Isabella replied, and her voice was different too. There was none of the usual tension, none of the defensiveness she always assumed when speaking with her mother-in-law. "I was scared too." Miguel moved closer to the living room entrance, moving like a ghost. He needed to see what was happening. What he saw left him completely bewildered. Esperanza and Isabella were sitting on the beige sofa they had bought last year, facing each other. His mother was holding his wife's hands, and both had tears in their eyes. But they weren't tears of anger or frustration. They were tears of understanding. "When I lost the baby," Isabella continued, her voice choked with emotion, "I thought you would blame me forever, and I couldn't blame you for it because I blamed myself." Miguel felt the world spin. His wife and his mother were having the conversation he had been trying to foster for years, the conversation he thought would never happen, and they were having it without him. "Ay, mija." Esperanza shook her head, squeezing Isabella's hands tighter. "You think I don't know what it's like to lose a child?" Miguel's heart stopped. What did his mother mean by that? "Before Miguel was born," Esperanza continued, her voice breaking with emotion, "I lost 3 babies. 3, one at 2 months, another at 4, and the last one I lost at 7 months. It was a girl. We were going to name her Esperanza, after me." Isabella covered her mouth with her free hand, her eyes filling with fresh tears. "Why did you never tell me that?" "Because it hurts too much," Esperanza replied, wiping her own tears. "And because I saw in you the same pain I carried for years, but instead of helping you, I attacked you. I projected my anger, my frustration, my sense of failure onto you." Miguel was paralyzed behind the wall, listening to his mother reveal secrets she had kept for over 30 years. 3 siblings he never knew he had. A pain his mother had carried alone for decades. "I thought that if I was hard on you," Esperanza continued, "you would become stronger, that you wouldn't give up like I almost did. But I was wrong. I was hurting you when I should have been helping you." "Esperanza," Isabella began, but she was cut off. "No, let me finish," the older woman said. "I need to ask for your forgiveness, not just for what I said about the baby, but for all these years of coldness. You are a wonderful woman, and my son is lucky to have you. I was the one who was too blind to see it." Miguel felt his own tears starting to form. This was the mother he had always wanted Isabella to know, the vulnerable, caring woman who existed behind the armor of toughness she had built over the years. Isabella let out a sob and threw herself into Esperanza's arms. The 2 women hugged with an intensity Miguel had never witnessed between them. It was as if years of hurt and misunderstanding were dissolving in that moment. "I need to ask for your forgiveness too," Isabella murmured against her mother-in-law's shoulder. I always thought you hated me because I wasn't good enough for Miguel. And that made me resentful, closed off. I never really tried to get to know you." Miguel leaned against the wall, feeling a mix of emotions he couldn't process. Joy at seeing the two most important women in his life finally connecting, sadness at discovering the deep pain his mother had hidden from him his entire life, and a strange sense of exclusion, as if he were an intruder observing a moment that wasn't meant for him. "You know what's funny?" Esperanza said, pulling back a little to look into Isabella's eyes. "Ever since you two got married, I lie awake at night praying for you to have children. Not because I want grandchildren. Well, I do. But that's not the most important thing. It's because I know you two would be incredible parents and that love needs to be shared." "We're still trying," Isabella confessed, wiping her face with the back of her hand. "But the doctor said it might take time. My body is still recovering, and emotionally. Sometimes I'm afraid to try again." "And it's normal to be afraid," Esperanza reassured her. "When I found out I was pregnant with Miguel after 3 losses, I was terrified. I didn't even want to leave the house, afraid that anything could go wrong again." Miguel vaguely remembered his mother saying she'd had a difficult pregnancy with him, but he never knew the context. He never imagined there had been other pregnancies, other attempts, other losses. "But you know what helped me overcome the fear?" Esperanza continued. "It was understanding that love doesn't just happen when a baby is born. The love you two have for each other, the love you already feel for a future child, that love already exists, and it doesn't depend on perfect timing or on bodies that work exactly how we want them to." Isabella nodded, absorbing every word. "Miguel and I have talked about adoption too. Maybe it's not about having a biological child, maybe it's about building a family, no matter how. And I will support you in any decision," Esperanza said firmly. "Whether it's a baby, adoption, or just the two of you taking care of each other for the rest of your lives, family isn't just about blood, Mija. It's about choice. And I choose you." Miguel felt a lump in his throat. For years he had tried to build bridges between these two women, tried to translate one's feelings to the other, tried to be the mediator in conflicts that seemed to have no solution. And now here they were, connecting in a way he had never been able to facilitate. "Can I tell you a secret?" Isabella asked, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Of course, Mija. Sometimes I make up excuses to come visit because I always wanted a mother like you. My own mom died when I was a teenager, and I always felt like something was missing in me. When Miguel introduced me to you, I had so much hope. And I rejected you," Esperanza said with regret, "because I was afraid you would reject me first. Losing my husband made me so scared of losing more people that I preferred to keep everyone at a distance." At that moment, Miguel realized he couldn't stay hidden any longer. Not because he felt uncomfortable watching, but because he wanted to be part of this moment. He wanted to hug these two women and tell them how much he loved them, how proud he was to see them finally understanding each other. He took a step toward the living room, but stopped when he heard Isabella speak again. "Esperanza, I have a confession to make, something I've never even told Miguel." Miguel's heart raced. A confession. Something Isabella had never told even him. He forced himself to stay still, even though every fiber of his being wanted to walk into the room and demand to know what it was. "You can tell me anything, Mija," Esperanza encouraged, her voice filled with a maternal affection Miguel rarely heard. Isabella took a deep breath. "When I had the miscarriage 2 years ago, I was on my way to the hospital alone because Miguel was on a business trip in Guayaquil. Do you remember?" "I remember," Esperanza nodded. "Miguel was frantic when he found out. He took the first flight back." "Right. But before he arrived, when I was in the emergency room, bleeding and scared, I called you." Miguel frowned. "What?" Isabella had called his mother that day. He never knew that. "You called me." Esperanza looked as surprised as Miguel felt. "I did," Isabella confirmed, her voice trembling slightly. "I was so scared, and I didn't have anyone else in Quito. My whole family is in Cuenca, and I needed a mother in that moment. I needed you." Esperanza covered her mouth with her hand, her eyes filling with tears again. "But when you answered," Isabella continued, "I couldn't speak. I heard your voice saying hello several times, and I just cried on the other end of the line. And then you hung up." "Oh my God," Esperanza whispered. "Was that you?" "I got that mysterious call that day. I thought it was a prank call or a wrong number. I wanted so badly for you to come get me," Isabella confessed, the tears now streaming freely. "I wanted you to hug me and tell me everything was going to be okay. But I was afraid you would think I was weak, or that I was bothering you, or that you would blame me somehow." Miguel leaned against the wall, feeling as if he'd been punched in the stomach. Isabella had gone through that terrible moment alone because she couldn't bring herself to ask for help, and his mother had been right there, available, but neither of them could break the barrier that existed between them. "Hi, mija," Esperanza sobbed, pulling Isabella into another tight hug. If I had known it was you, I would have run to that hospital. I would have stayed by your side until Miguel got there. I would have taken care of you the way you deserved to be cared for." "I know that now," Isabella murmured against her mother-in-law's shoulder. "But back then, all I saw was the distance between us. All I saw were the criticisms, the disapproving looks. I couldn't see the caring woman who was hidden behind all that protection." Miguel closed his eyes, remembering that day. He had been in an important meeting with company executives in Guayaquil when he got the call from Isabella at the hospital. He took the first available flight, but it took him 4 hours to get there. When he finally arrived at the hospital, he found Isabella lying in bed, pale and quiet, saying she was fine, that the doctors had taken care of everything. She never mentioned feeling alone, never said she had tried to call anyone. He had assumed she had been strong, that she had handled everything until he arrived. Now he realized she had been strong, yes, but in a much more painful way than he had ever imagined. "You know what I regret the most?" Esperanza said, pulling away to look into Isabella's eyes. "It's that we both lost 2 years of mutual support because of pride and fear. 2 years when we could have been helping each other heal instead of hurting one another." "But it's not too late," Isabella replied, holding her mother-in-law's hands firmly. "We still have time. We can still be the family we were always supposed to be." At that moment, Miguel heard the sound of a key in the front door lock. Someone else was arriving. Miguel turned quickly toward the door, confused. Who else had a key to the house? The sound of familiar footsteps echoed in the hallway, and a female voice called out, "Isabella Esperanza, where are you?" It was Carmen, Isabella's older sister, who lived in Cuenca. But what was she doing in Quito? And how did she have a key to the house? "We're in the living room, Carmen," Isabella called back, quickly drying the tears from her face. Miguel hid further behind the wall, now completely lost. Why hadn't Isabella mentioned Carmen was coming, and why did her sister have a key? Carmen appeared at the living room entrance, carrying 2 shopping bags and a bouquet of yellow flowers, Isabella's favorite. She stopped abruptly when she saw Esperanza and Isabella sitting together on the sofa, still holding hands. "Oh my God," Carmen said, a huge smile spreading across her face. "Finally, you two finally talked." Miguel frowned. What did she mean? Finally. Was Carmen expecting this? "Carmen!" Isabella stood up and ran to hug her sister. "What a wonderful surprise! I thought you weren't getting here until tomorrow." "I managed to get out of work early," Carmen explained, hugging her sister tightly. "And I couldn't wait to see how your talk went." Esperanza stood up too, looking a little shy. "Hi, Carmen. Thank you for everything you did." Carmen let go of Isabella and went to Esperanza, surprising the older woman with a warm hug. "Esperanza, I always knew you two just needed a little push to understand each other." Miguel was completely lost now. What little push? What did Carmen have to do with this conversation? "Sit here with us," Isabella said, pulling her sister toward the sofa. "Tell us about your trip." "First, you tell me how the talk went," Carmen insisted, her eyes shining with curiosity. "You both look like you've been crying, but it's good crying, right?" Isabella and Esperanza exchanged a knowing glance, and Miguel saw something he'd never seen before, his wife and his mother sharing a moment of intimacy, as if they were truly mother and daughter. "It was revealing," Isabella said carefully. "Esperanza told me things I never knew about her, and I opened my heart too. And we discovered we're more alike than we imagined," Esperanza added. "Both stubborn, both protective of the people we love, both afraid of being vulnerable." Carmen clapped her hands softly, clearly emotional. "I knew it. I always told Isabella you two were too much alike, not to get along." "Carmen," Isabella asked, "how did you know today would be the right day? Why did you decide to come right now?" Carmen smiled mysteriously. "Because Esperanza and I have been talking." Miguel almost let out an audible gasp of surprise. His mother and his sister-in-law had been talking? Since when? "Carmen called me last week," Esperanza explained to Isabella, who looked just as surprised as Miguel felt. "She said she was worried about you, that you weren't doing well, and that maybe it was time for the two of us to resolve our issues." "I saw how much you were suffering, sis," Carmen said, taking Isabella's hand. "You love Miguel, you love his family, but you were living like a stranger in your own home. And I know how important it is for you to have a mother figure, especially now that you're trying to start a family." Isabella started crying again, but this time they were tears of gratitude. "You did all this for me?" "It wasn't just for you," Carmen admitted. "It was for all of us. Miguel was suffering too, watching you two fight all the time, and Esperanza. Well, I realized she was suffering just as much as you were. She just didn't know how to show it." Esperanza nodded, wiping her own eyes. "Carmen helped me understand that my way of protecting Miguel was actually hurting him, and that I was missing the chance to have a real daughter. And she helped me see," Isabella continued, "that maybe Esperanza's coldness was actually fear, not contempt." Miguel felt a wave of love and gratitude for Carmen. His sister-in-law had managed to do in 1 week what he had been trying to do for years. She had been the bridge his family needed. "So," Carmen said with a mischievous smile, "where's my brother-in-law? Shouldn't he be getting home from work around now?" Miguel's heart pounded. It was now or never. He could stay hidden and pretend he had just arrived, or he could be honest about having witnessed one of the most important moments in his family's life. Taking a deep breath, he chose honesty. He stepped out from behind the wall and appeared at the entrance to the living room, his eyes still moist and an expression of pure emotion on his face. "Actually," he said softly, "I've been here for a while." The 3 women turned to him simultaneously, their expressions a mix of total surprise. Isabella stood up quickly, her cheeks flushing. "Miguel, how long have you been standing there?" "Since your mother started talking about fear," he replied, walking slowly into the room. "I heard the whole conversation, about the babies she lost, about the phone call to the hospital, about you two finally understanding each other." Esperanza stood up too, looking worried. "Mijo, you shouldn't have been eavesdropping." "No, Mom," Miguel interrupted her gently. "I should have been listening. I should have known a long time ago about the babies you lost. I should have known Isabella tried to call you on that terrible day. And I should have known you two were capable of understanding each other if someone just created the right opportunity. He looked at Carmen with gratitude. Thank you, Carmen. You did what I couldn't do in 5 years. Carmen smiled. Sometimes you need an outsider to see things clearly, Miguel. You were too close to the situation to have perspective. Miguel walked over to Isabella and took her hands. Why did you never tell me about calling my mom that day? Isabella looked down. Because I was ashamed. Ashamed of needing help, ashamed that I couldn't speak when she answered, ashamed of feeling so alone when you were doing your best to get back to me. Isabella, love of my life, Miguel said, lifting her chin so she would look into his eyes. You never, ever have to be ashamed of needing help, especially not with me and not with my mother. He turned to Esperanza. And Mom, why did you never tell me about my siblings? Esperanza sighed deeply. Because I didn't want you to grow up with fear, mijo. I didn't want you to think that starting a family was something dangerous or painful. I wanted you to have the courage to love completely, without reservation. But hiding the pain doesn't make it disappear, Miguel said softly. And it made me grow up not understanding why you were sometimes sad for no apparent reason, why you were so protective, why you were so afraid of losing me. Esperanza nodded, tears running down her face. You're right. I thought I was protecting you, but I was really protecting myself from having to relive that pain. Miguel opened his arms and hugged his mother tightly. Mom, your losses are my losses too. Your fears are my fears. And your strength has always been my inspiration. Over his mother's shoulder, he extended an arm to Isabella, who joined the hug. Carmen, not wanting to be left out, joined in as well. And for a moment, the room fell silent, filled only with the sound of 4 people who loved each other deeply, finally connected without barriers. When they parted, Miguel wiped his eyes and smiled. Well, I had planned to surprise my wife with a romantic dinner tonight, but I think what happened here was much better than any restaurant. Actually, Carmen said with a sly smile, I have a better suggestion. Why don't we cook together tonight? I brought ingredients to make the paella our grandmother taught us, and I'm sure Esperanza has some delicious Ecuadorian recipes to share. I would love to learn how to make paella, Esperanza said, her eyes shining with enthusiasm, and I can teach you my locro de papa and my hornado. Isabella smiled, that radiant smile Miguel hadn't seen in months. That sounds perfect, a family night for real. Miguel looked around the room, at his wife, his mother, and his sister-in-law, and felt a peace he hadn't experienced in years. Finally, his family was whole. 3 hours later, the Santander kitchen was transformed into a veritable culinary battlefield. Carmen commanded the paella with authority, while Esperanza taught Isabella the secrets of Ecuadorian seasoning. Miguel had become the official sous chef, chopping onions and washing dishes, but mostly watching the 3 most important women in his life laugh and talk as if they were lifelong friends. No, Isabella, Esperanza said, laughing, as she guided her daughter-in-law's hands with the meat seasoning. You have to feel the seasoning with your heart, not just your hands. Carmen always says the same thing about the paella, Isabella replied, smiling. That good food comes from love, not from a recipe. Exactly, Carmen exclaimed, stirring the golden rice in the large pan. Our grandma used to say that when you cook with anger, the food turns out bitter. When you cook with love, it heals the soul. Miguel stopped chopping tomatoes and looked at the 3 women. You know what this means, right? What? They asked in unison. It means that from now on, whenever someone in the family is sad or angry, we're going to solve it by cooking together. Ay, Miguel, Esperanza laughed. If that's the case, you're going to gain a lot of weight. Because I plan on getting a little angry every now and then, just to have an excuse to cook with my girls. Your girls? Isabella asked, raising an eyebrow with a playful smile. Of course, Esperanza said with conviction. Carmen has been a daughter of my heart for a while now. And you, well, you've always been my daughter too. I was just too stubborn to accept it. Dinner was served at 8 o'clock, at the dining table that was usually only used on special occasions. Carmen had insisted on using the good Santander family china, the set Miguel's grandmother had brought from Spain. A toast, Miguel said, raising his glass of red wine, to the family we've always had, but that we've finally learned to see. To second chances, Esperanza added, raising her glass. To the courage to be vulnerable, Isabella continued, and to the patience of sisters-in-law who have to put up with crazy families, Carmen finished, making everyone laugh. As they ate, the stories flowed naturally. Esperanza told stories about Miguel's youth, including mischief she had never shared before. Isabella talked about her childhood in Cuenca, about how she always wanted siblings, and how Carmen had always been her best friend, as well as her sister. Carmen shared memories of their grandmother, who always said that family isn't just about blood, but about choice and commitment. You know what I was thinking? Isabella said during dessert, a flan that Esperanza had made from memory. Maybe we can make this a tradition. Family dinner every Thursday. I would love that, Esperanza replied immediately. I can teach you both all the family recipes. And I can teach you our family's recipes too, Carmen offered. We can create our own family cookbook. Miguel smiled, watching the conversation flow. And maybe, he said carefully, when we have children, they can learn these recipes too. A momentary silence fell over the table, but it wasn't an uncomfortable one. It was a silence filled with hope. When we have children, Isabella repeated softly, however they come to us, they will grow up in a family full of love and good food. And they'll know from a young age, Esperanza added, that family is about being there for each other, especially in the hard times. When the evening ended and Carmen went to the guest room, Miguel and Isabella went up to their bedroom, hand in hand. As they were getting ready for bed, Isabella turned to her husband. Thank you, she said simply. For what? For giving me the family I always wanted, for being patient while we figured out how to be a real family. Miguel kissed her softly. Thank you for not giving up on us, not on me, not on her, and not on us. That night, for the first time in years, Miguel slept, knowing that his family was truly united, and when he woke up the next morning, it would be to a completely new life. So what did you think of this story of reconciliation? Have you ever experienced something similar in your family? Let me know in the comments. If you liked it, leave a like to help me continue bringing real stories that touch the heart. And subscribe to the channel, because next week I'm going to tell the story of a father who discovered a secret about his adopted son that changed everything. You don't want to miss it.